Hi guys, this is Daniel Gonzalez and welcome to Help Me Write, and today we're going to be going over introductions and how to actually construct them. Now, before we get started, I do want to clarify something. If you are an individual that has been writing for a very long time and you know the way that you like to do introductions in academic papers, which is what we're focusing on today, if you have a unique path of taking when you do introductions and it works, go ahead and stick with that. I am targeting people with this video that are not very confident in their writing skills or their capabilities of making introductions specifically. So that's who we're aiming at with this video. There's no one exact way of making an introduction or a paper for that matter. But this is a good starter for most people. And what I like to tell my students, because I do teach English, is I tell them, use this as a framework, and when you get good enough, you can break away from that framework. But until then, use it as a safe and solid alternative, right? Or choice to a way of making introductions. But let's go ahead and get started. The basics that I want, and I hope you have a pen and pencil with you. If you don't, go ahead and pause the video and come right back if you do, when you do. What I want you to do is I want you to understand a concept, and this is the way we're going to be approaching the introduction in this video, is the concept of funnel. Okay? A funnel is the little thing that we use to kind of make sure that water doesn't slosh around when we're trying to pour something in, or juice or gasoline, right? A funnel is wide at the top and it's narrow at the bottom. It's got a little hole at the bottom, and we pour liquid into it, and it funnels the liquid down into the small little part of the nozzle, and then that goes somewhere. That is the image I want you to think of when we're working with the introduction today. If you want, you can even take a pen and just draw a funnel, right? And then just draw it wide, and then make it really narrow, okay? So now that you have that image, I want you to get in your head, this is the way we're approaching the introduction. We are going to go very wide with our information at the beginning, at the top of our introduction, the first couple of sentences. And then we're going to start getting more and more specific. And as we get more specific, we're going to start getting more and narrow with our content until we get very specific with our thesis statement. And every introduction has to have a thesis statement. And then we transition into another paragraph. Okay? All right, well, let's get started with that. So the first thing you want to do with an introduction, right, in this concept, the first thing you want to do is to have a hook or an attention grabber, okay? Your audience, before they read the paper, have to be intrigued into reading the content. They have to get excited about reading the content. If they're not excited about reading the content, there's a good chance that they won't read it, or they're going to just kind of get bored and not want to read through the whole thing and stuff because you're so specific and they're not interested in your topic. But if you can get them interested in your topic, you've got them already. Does that make sense, right? You want to get them interested in the very beginning before you start giving your points, okay? And I'm going to show you a demo of what I mean about that later on right now. So we want to have our attention grabber at the top, and our attention grabber is a very general statement or statements. Very general. We are casting out the big wide net to try to get as many fishes as possible here. And you're going to see what I mean when we actually when I show you what it looks like, right, on paper, okay? So go ahead and write that down if you want. The first thing that we start an introduction with, right, is the hook or the attention grabber, okay? Now let's move on to the next part, which is right after we get their attention, we introduce our topic. All right, so now you see we're getting a little bit more narrow in our concept, right? And we're getting more narrow in our introduction. We're going to introduce our topic, okay? So maybe an example, let's just say really quick, I'm talking about apples or something like that. And the point of my paper is to say that green apples are the best apples. So my attention grabber could be something along the lines of, since the dawn of time, right? Just messing around. Since the dawn of time, fruit has always been man's first choice as he struggles to survive in the elements. And I'm like, okay, like, interesting, right? And then I get a little bit more specific. Of those fruits, The one that has stood the test of time more and has evolved with man the most is the apple. It's like, okay, now I'm getting a little bit more specific. I'm trying to get to my point there, which are, apples or green apples are the best apples of all time. Okay. So you saw what I did there, right? I was very wide at the top with my hooker attention grabber, trying to get you interested. Like, hey, he's talking about humanity and growing and fruit and all this stuff. And I don't even like apples a lot, but he's talking about fruit and all this stuff. And I'm trying to get them interested with some general statements. Then I get more specific and be like, okay, now let me start talking a little bit more about apples, because my paper is about apples. Okay. Then after you do that, after you've done your hook at the top, and then after you've gone into your introduction of the topic, that's where you can introduce your thesis. That's where you introduce the thesis statement. And I'm going to have another video specifically on thesis statement, but a very quick explanation of it. A thesis statement is 1 or 2 sentences that summarize your entire paper. Okay? We call it over here in my school the controlling idea. It is the idea that controls the direction of your paper. And so the paper cannot deviate from the controlling idea. If the reader were to read just those 2 sentences, they would know exactly what your point is in your paper. Okay? And so so logically speaking, the thesis statement has a lot of weight to it, right? And we put a lot of work into that thesis statement. With my students, I tell them the thing I'm going to grill you on the most in your paper is the thesis statement, right? Because it's got to be solid. So then we get to our point, and my point here is a very simple one: is green apples are the best apples in the entire branch of apples. Sure, okay, they get it, right? That one sentence tells you this entire paper is about green apples are the best apples of all apples. Cool. After you include your thesis statement, after you've got that there, you've got to include two more things, right? And this is something that a lot of people don't think about. You've got to give, number one, a significance. What is a significance? A significance is basically telling the reader why what you're saying is important, okay? You've got to tell your reader what it is or why they should be listening to you. So they go, yeah, apples are great. Green apples are great. Who gives a crap, right? You have to tell them why it's important. You have to tell them with 1 or 2 sentences. So here I could just, I'm making it off the top of my head. Green apples are the greatest apples of all apples. There's my thesis statement. And my significance would be, in a world where there are over 20 types of apples, I think there's like 20 types of apples, right? To say one stands above the rest is saying a lot. It is saying that there is a preference not only of the American people, of the world, and that the space where we grow apples should be used more for green apples and less of the variety. In fact, we should maybe consider getting rid of some apples to give more room to green apples. And boom, okay, I got my significance. I have this crazy idea that we should clear out land and start, getting rid of other apples to make room for green apples. Hey, it's a crazy idea, but maybe that's what I'm trying to prove, right? I've got to tell you why you should care about my point, right? I've got to give you a reason to care. Okay, if I can't give you that, then there is no good point to my paper, because I can't give you a point to care. And that significance, guys, that one part, it is a lot. It is a lot. It adds so much weight to introductions, and if you can show that to a reader, this is why you should care about what I'm saying, they get really interested. They have a reason to pay attention to you. Now, of course, you're not going to be talking about apples, so you have much more reason than what I'm coming up with here, but that's what I want you to think about when you're writing an introduction. You've got to give them a reason to care about what you're talking about. And the last thing I tell my students all the time, have a transition sentence, okay? Have a transition sentence. It makes your paper just feel like it's so smooth. It makes your work feel like it's just connected. It's just like one fluid idea. It makes it seem like things are not disjointed. Now, when you go further on in your education and you start working, you might want ideas to feel disjointed. You may want something to feel very separated, but for right now, we want our entire work to feel connected, right? Every paragraph to connect. So we use transition sentences and topic sentences to do that. So a transition sentence, all it is, and I'm going to have a video about them as well. Very quickly, a transition sentence, right? A very quick explanation is a sentence that connects the idea of the first paragraph or the top paragraph to the paragraph underneath it. So I just talked to you about apples and how they're great and all this stuff and whatnot. So maybe my next paragraph is one of the first reasons why green apples are great. And so the transition sentence would read something like, now without further ado, the first reason why green apples are so great has to be their color. And then I transition into my next paragraph. You see, I give just a brief idea of what my next paragraph is going to be about in my transition sentence. Okay? Now, that was just an idea, but you should see the framework that I did there. It was very wide at the top with the hook or attention grabber, going into the topic introduction, the thesis, the significance, and boom, we're out with the transition, right? Very, very simple. So let me show you what it looks like, guys, right? Let me actually show you. So I gave you an example there, but I want to show you what it looks like to write one, okay? So let me go ahead and switch the scene here. All right, and I just wrote this really quick. All right, so this one's an example here. Let's say I'm writing a review. Okay, it can be about McDonald's, it can be about anything. I just finished playing a game called BioShock about a week or so ago, or 2 weeks ago. And let's say I'm going to do a review on the game. Okay, and I'm going to bring my mic over here because I'm going to start typing. I'm going to start writing a review on this game. And before you get started with your introduction, you cannot write the introduction without writing your thesis first. It can't be done. It can't be done because if you don't have a controlling idea, a thesis that controls your paper, you can't introduce anything. Okay, do you understand me? Right? So before you start on the intro, it's imperative that you have a thesis statement. If you don't, your intro is going to be all over the place, guys, right? It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be very, very sloppy, all right? So here's the thesis that I wrote. The original BioShock is a masterpiece of storytelling through its use of visual effects, rich characters, and an amazing narrative that twists and turns, leaving you wondering what is true in the game and what is true in existence, right? I like threes. So there's my thesis, all right? So I'll plug that into my paper in a little bit. So I gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections, okay? Let's fill them out. So take a paper if you want. Let's say you're writing a paper right now and write these sections here, right? Attention grabber, topic introduction, thesis, significance, and transition sentence. Let's break up the introduction into sections, okay? So I need to do an attention grabber here, all right? And you don't have to start with this one, but I think it's the easiest one, so I'm just gonna start with it. Let's talk about how gaming has evolved since Mario, right? So let's say something along those lines. Let's say, what's it called? When video games were first conceptualized, I think it's conceptualized. I'll let it fix it. Oh, maybe that's the way you spell it. Nice. People were playing table. Oh wow, I can't spell today. Table tennis digitally. Now, the gaming medium has led to people, and I'm just writing as much as I want right now. Don't worry about sounding pretty right now. You can fix it later when you're revising. Has led to people viewing it as a form of art that can not only inspire, but critique real world ideas. Okay. And don't worry, here's a little tip, and we'll talk about this later when we get into revising. Don't worry about typos or anything right now, okay? Just write, just get your idea out there, okay? If it makes you feel better, you can really quick fix some words, but don't worry about being super clean here. So here's my attention grabber. Very simple one, right? And I may not like it later, but it's a start. And then I want to go to my topic introduction. I've got to get into BioShock, right? One example of a game that critiques real world ideas is the game BioShock. In it, a character is thrown into a world of free market capitalism that has gone wrong, leading us to wonder if that is the danger of capitalism. And again, I can fix it later. So boom, there's my topic introduction. I'm into BioShock, right? But I've got to connect it now, right? I've got to connect it to the idea that it's this amazing game. So let me add one more sentence. One thing is for certain. BioShock is a phenomenal piece of art. A piece of gaming. How about that? I might even search that later. And now, guys, look, the thesis is so easy because if you've already written it, we just plug it in. Boom. You're done with that. So now I've got to tell you a reason to care about my thesis. I got to tell you a reason to care about my work. So how do I make that? How do I make you care about that? Well, if young people, right, play video games, and if young people, right, are inspired or impacted by video games, and you know what? Hold on one second. See, there's no more music, so let me go ahead and put some. There it is. If young people are inspired by video games and are playing video games rather than they read books, and maybe gaming is the new medium to inspire people and expose them to ideas. So maybe that's the significance here. So let's go with that angle, right? So let me finish on my last sentence here, leaving you wondering what is true in the game and what is true in existence. What is even more impressive is how such an amazing game becomes evidence for a changing method. Yeah, let's do that. A changing method to educate and expose people. To educate and expose individuals. I like that. While some may never open a book in their life, they may learn everything they could from the book in an adventure played through a controller. I like that. Let's see here. So now we've got a transition, guys. We got a transition here, right? And we're just brainstorming right now. I wanted you guys to see this all. We get transition. I'm going to transition to my first point here. I'm going to transition to, let's see here, visual effects, right? The first way that BioShock impacts and reaches out to the audience is through its stunning visual effects. Boom. Done. So, you've got all these separate sections here, and it doesn't mean that you're going to stick with them, guys. You can absolutely revise these things later. But this is what I want you to see here. Let's go ahead and delete this. Well, actually, I'm going to leave that. Let's delete this. And then let's delete this. And then let's delete this. And ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves an introduction. Ta-da! There you have an introduction that starts wide at the top and gets narrow at the bottom. Now let's read it out loud and let's hear what it sounds like to actually work through an introduction like this. When video games were first conceptualized, people were playing table tennis digitally. Now, the gaming medium has led to people viewing it as a form of art that can not only inspire, but critique real-world ideas. One example of a game that critiques real-world ideas is the game BioShock. In it, a character is thrown into a world of free market capitalism that has gone wrong, leading us to wonder if that is the danger of capitalism. One thing is for certain, BioShock is a phenomenal piece of gaming. The original BioShock is a masterpiece of storytelling through its use of visual effects, rich characters, and an amazing narrative that twists and turns, leaving you wondering what is true in the game and what is true in existence. What is even more impressive is how such an amazing game becomes evidence for a changing method to educate and expose individuals. While some may never open a book in their life, they may learn everything they could from the book in an adventure played through a controller. Oops, forgot one. The first way that BioShock impacts and reaches out to the audience, it's through its stunning visual effects. Done. You see how easy that is when we have structure, guys? It's so much easier when you have a structure. And I think my music ran out. I'm sorry about that. But I hope that this was still impactful for you all. Stick to this structure, okay? Revise the idea later on. Go back to it, play with it. The important thing is having something on a paper to work with, okay? Guys, this is pretty much it. There is one last comment that I want to tell you all, and it's this. The introduction, and here's just a suggestion, and it might not work for everyone. The introduction is something that I recommend to my students writing second to last, okay? The last thing you write is the title on your paper. But the second to last thing you write is the introduction. Why? It's because you haven't written your paper yet, so you don't know what you're introducing. Write the body paragraphs first. Write your conclusion after that. And now that you know what you're introducing, go ahead and write your introduction. And it should be much, much easier. But if you haven't done any of that, it's going to be really, really, really hard to create an introduction. Now, I've been doing this for years, okay? I got my master's in English, and I was in school for about 5 years, and then I went to get my master's for 2 years. I went to school English for about 7 years. So I've been doing this for a while, so it's not too hard for me to just off the top of my head come up with an intro. But for many, many writers, it really is a difficult thing. So consider writing your introduction last. If that doesn't work for you, go ahead and write it whenever you want, but it's just a suggestion. Guys, I hope this really, really helped you guys out. I had a blast working with you guys. Feel free to write comments down underneath the video of questions that you may have on this method or anything that I didn't explain correctly or you would like me to restate or ideas for other videos. And that's it. I will see you all later. Goodbye, guys.